Welcome everyone for today's podcast. This is Jay Kumar Mohanachandran with you. And today we are going to discuss one of the most interesting topic: leadership in AI era. So, welcome to today's episode of Digital Dunes by ICD Digital, where we explore the intersection of technology, leadership, and transformation. Before we proceed, let me share some data or some insights. AI is no longer a futuristic concept, it's embedded on our decision making, our security systems, and our business processes. But what does leadership look like in this AI driven era? How do CIOs balance the AI's potential with its risk, its innovation with its governance? To unpack these questions, I'm joined by one of the most respected CIOs of the region, Vineet Purushothaman, Group CIO at AstraDM Healthcare. Vineet, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you. It's an honor. And thank you. Thank you, ICD Digital. Thank you, Jay. And it's awesome to be here. Thank you.
Great. So, Vineet, this topic has been something which I've been talking about in multiple forums. Where AI has become the talk of the town for quite some time, and now it's not more about technology; it's all about the leadership. As leaders, I'm sure we all come across so many situations in our career, in our life, to maneuver this, especially in terms of how we maneuver the technology related nuances. So that's one of the predominant reason why we wanted to talk about this, which is the leadership in an AI era. I think that's most relevant at this stage rather than any other time. So when we really look at it, Vineet, I mean, if I may ask you, you have been at the forefront of digital transformation for one of the most dynamic industries, healthcare. How has your role as a CIO evolved, and how much of that shift has been driven by AI?
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. Thank you once again, ICD Digital, and all of you bringing together this opportunity. And thank you for having me. On a lighter note, I always love to bring in English into the conversation, and when we're talking tech, because that I believe is the biggest gap when it comes to any conversations. So other day I was chatting with my team, and I was saying this, that AI happens to be the two vowels that have come together and created so much of mess, so much of discussion, because we always know the vowels are part of most of the sentence. You can't avoid vowels. There are various aspects that you talk about. But when it comes to AI and I, perhaps this became such a big talk of the town at any point of time. So that's the English aspect of it, and not the tech part. Yes, as you said, been in the industry for over 2 decades, and we've been knowing each other for most of those times.
Yeah.
Technology has shifted its importance, its significance, irrespective of which industry you talk about. The significance has changed. Sometimes it used to be a basic necessity, then it became an enabler, and I believe it is no more an enabler. It's a driver. It's that edge. While it continues to be all the more necessary, and in many phases of technology, it's almost moved to consumerism, because you don't need a CIO for a great part of technology nowadays, because it's sometimes an appliance. It's something as good as a switch on and get used, and switch off when you don't want to use. So therefore, that itself has changed the role of the CIOs. I believe in the last decade and a lot, and even when the recent larger transformations that were driven by the black swan events like COVID and all of that, the role of a CIO is the more C aspect of it, and being a CXO, than an I or a T that comes in a CIO or a CTO or whatever role. The more the CIOs have adapted to that, the more they have succeeded, is what I believe. AI, just like many other technologies that we can put into a larger bracket of emerging technologies, have definitely made, I won't say made things easier for CIOs, definitely challenged CIOs. Now, to answer the last part of your question, okay, how does CIOs work with this? As I guess the CIO's role is now to make not just himself and his team, but the rest of the leadership work with him when it comes to driving AI. Just like many other emerging technologies, it's not just about a CIO or the technology team. It's the business as a whole and the leadership as a whole.
Okay, that's brilliant. I think you put it very nicely. Especially you talked about that consumerization, and how IT or technology has moved from that angle towards become like a consumerized object or subject, where everybody talks about it and everybody knows a lot more than us. Some point in time, we all believe that in our organizations, it has become very, very common. Where
And sometimes it is true. There is nothing wrong, and sometimes
exactly.
it's true, because sometimes it's always fine. I'm very comfortable in a zone now where you believe that the other CXOs know
Knows
certain
much better.
things more than you.
Yeah.
I do not want to be, or you, none of us want to be feigning
Yeah.
that I know it all. None of us know it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also that aspect of believing more towards and understanding more about the C aspect and understanding the business better. I mean, this is what which is the need of the hour, I would say. I mean, be it any organization, small, medium, or large, for that matter. Now, everybody has got the access towards all sort of technology and all sort of information. It's all available at the fingertips. So being on that C and understanding and adapting to that level, rather than being, getting into the nuances of operations and operational aspects, is something which is more crucial. And I believe you summarized it really well. If I may ask a little more in depth in terms of the qualities, like we talked about the aspects, but do you think that any human aspects or human elements are critical, specific to the same question? Like any specific leadership qualities that would be essential in this AI era?
Uh, there could be many. I mean, the most basic one is when it comes to uh, enabling AI. So the interesting piece about this, all discussions that we have on AI, is because all of us listening to us in the audience, and anybody who understands a little bit of technology already knows enough about AI. There's nothing that me and Jay is going to talk about that you guys don't know about. That's for sure.
Exactly.
So it's all about how, as leaders, which is why the topic is very important. The leaders, us, not just in technology, across the business, how do you adapt to AI? How do you use AI? The biggest one that comes as a behavior, as a value, you might call it, is trust. Just like many other technologies that have come into the fore and started helping humans, whether it's driving your car or whether it is a simple microwave that you use, unless you trust that device, unless you trust that system, you will never use it.
Yeah.
And then when you see that device or that machine or that algorithm or anything that we're calling AI is doing much more than you expect, is surprising you every element, the trust becomes all the more important, because now you want that trust, because otherwise you will start getting you're getting scared of that technology. When you bring in when you bring in the fear or bring in the doubt into that solution or that algorithm or that technology, you're definitely not driving adoption. You are then stopping usage. You are then preventing it from being used. And if you as a CIO is in that phase, obviously, or a leader as a CIO, any CXO is in that phase, you will always try a lot of examples and pilots, but will never go live with anything. Okay, that's the biggest one. Then specifically talking about where I've come from, where as a CIO of a healthcare organization, I have to be, 10 times more careful. I have to look at all the aspects before even I try this, because like I keep saying, any technology going wrong in any other places is different from healthcare, because it's a matter of life and death. Therefore, it brings in a lot more cautiousness. You have to be very sure about if there are anything that you need to, or if you looked at all aspects of it, if you bring that's where you bring in your colleagues in the other function or your business stakeholders, and in many of these in solutions like this or anything that you want to try, I definitely want the clinicians to be right in the beginning, even when I started thinking about it, than bringing them later down the course to come and why don't you just test it?
Okay.
It will never work. So if you bring up the stakeholder engagement right up front, it is very helpful in any technology deployments for that matter. But then in things like AI, you can't just bring in at the end saying that, you know what, we found something very interesting. Why don't you have a look at it? Can't work.
Okay. That's great. I think, I'm sure audience would have a great takeaway here. The trust is one of the most important aspect, and it is not just for AI, as you rightly mentioned, it's for any technology. I mean, as long as you are a leader and as long as you are empowered to do transformation or, drive transformations within your organizations, you bring in any technology, you bring in any change for that matter, it's all about building that trust and making sure that the other side understands what you're talking about. The more you're able to kind of communicate that in a business language where business understands what you're talking and you're able to build that trust, I think, you're halfway through. And so that's very nicely summarized. And also the point towards leading towards my next question, which is you talked about it already in terms of what is that biggest impact, especially for healthcare as an industry. But again, if we focus a little more, towards the healthcare, if I just do a double click on the healthcare, how is AI, in your view, improving the healthcare industry, especially related to the patient care, the diagnostics and hospital operations, and where do you see its biggest impact in the coming years?
Yeah, sure. Before I touch upon that, if I may, Jay, also bring in another aspect that perhaps is very important to touch upon when it comes to AI. Even when I was responding to your previous conversation, previous query, AI in itself, it's not a product out there. AI is not a tool out there. AI is not a thing out there. It's very important for people to understand this because, and many understand that. I'm sure many of you in the audience will say, "Oh, that's obvious," but it's important to sometimes explicitly state that, which is why I'm saying this, because AI is a combination of several things coming together, right? A clean, valid, valuable data, a good processing power, which is the horsepower which drives that, a good set of algorithms that's been tested and tested and tested to get the right results, a set of knowledge about the solutioning or that particular problem that you're trying to crack. All the aspects of it has been again and again put into the algorithm. An engine that continuously is learning, which is why it's called artificial intelligence. All of that put together comes together to deliver something. It's very important that because many a time there are various places. Sometimes you call a robotic process automation as AI. Sometimes you call a script as AI. Sometimes you call a simple automation or scrubbing of these websites as AI. They are all various flavors of AI. But when you really want to talk about AI, when all of this comes together. So I thought I'll just touch upon it because I think it's very important that we we bring it to that. Now coming to your question of saying, within healthcare, what has been the biggest change that AI brought about? Which are the various areas that was your question, right? Just like any other sector, I believe the AI, the role of artificial intelligence and solutions around using AI can be categorized into. I broadly create that into 4 quadrants. One is an everyday AI, which is very very similar to a quadrant that Gartner also at some point of time spoke about. Is there's always an everyday AI and there is a game changing AI. The everyday AI is something that you come across on a day-to-day basis. Everyday AI is things that most likely you're using. You're not really conscious about it, but you're still using it. Over a period, it's become all the more relevant, all the more used. So that's one everyday AI. And the game changing is all things that have really gone ahead, further further become efficient, filtered, and creative, and actually game changing in whichever industry you're operating with. So in healthcare, any game changing ones could be that has helped drive drug discovery, genomics, clinical aspects, right? There are many out there. And within this everyday and game changing again, the next part is for me is internal and external. Internal is all everyday AI aspects or all game changing aspects that you can work with your internal stakeholders. That is typically your employees, your own, the employees, your team, everything internal. And external is everything that is impacting a customer, a patient in my case, right? We loosely touch upon in healthcare now. We don't just say patients, because in healthcare we definitely consciously working towards moving from a lot of illness conversation to wellness conversations. And in wellness conversations, they're not patients, they're customers to you, right? So this is why the external is all about patients and customers. So when you look at this quadrant, if you can imagine this quadrant in your head, it's like everywhere, everyday AI, game changing AI, every day has got an external, which one, that box on the top left corner is all those ideas and all those things that you can use externally, but normally, which could be chatbots, which could be AI bots, conversations helping a patient get the right appointment, right? All of that fall in there. There's a lot of stuff that can be internal in everyday, which is where we try solutions and bots to do a lot of mundane activities. There, for me, the most exciting one is where I can take away all these forms and papers and various, not even now we moved away from papers, but even when otherwise a lot of entries that happen on our basic systems, which somebody like a nurse has to go on entering, I could actually make their life easier by putting in bots. A lot of information could be collated and all entered during the night, and where the nurse is taking care of the patient during that time rather than sitting in front of a PC and entering. So a lot of mundane work can be automated. But that's why I said there could be an RPA or robotic process automation coming into picture, a bot working there, or it could be bringing together many solutions to do the work better. Then comes on the game changing one. There's a lot that happened. So one of the most talked about, most easiest and most interesting aspects around the game changing and in the clinical aspect internally is about all the work that happened around imaging. Imaging, when I say imaging, it's about the radiology, the MRIs, the CT scans, all of that is imaging. There's a lot that's happened there and that has very, very interesting use cases. There are many during COVID days where the entire assessment of a COVID would happen much faster on a radiology image than having to wait for the RT-PCR or any of those tests that we used to do. This was a clear use case, a very good use case, and then that went on to become very popular with most of the radiologists, where they could actually scan through the images much faster, and their time was spent more on looking at the real cases they want to relook at. This also brings in another aspect. I don't know whether it must be there in one of your parts, some part of your conversation, but there's nothing wrong in talking about it. There's a lot of fear around AI taking away jobs, right? So this imaging piece was a classic case where many radiologists thought their job would go because the basic majority of the scans would be done by, and it could very clearly come out and give the results. But what actually happened was it created more jobs in a way, because the radiologists were able to spend more time doing quality work, and that brought in more jobs. So instead of just scanning through an X-ray or an MRI or a CT scan and coming out with very standard templates, saying, yeah, it's all normal, that could be easily done by AI. So then coming to just finishing my quadrant, is that the top rightmost quadrant is when we are actually doing game changing and external. That's a bit interesting, because that's where a lot of things where you work with customers and patients, whether you call it the DNA mapping to genomics to trying drugs with them, clinical trials with people, all on technology using AI, all of that falls in there. So there are a lot of solutions. There are things around retinopathy. There are solutions that can just do a retina scan and give you a lot of history about you, and actually work on and cure your diabetics even before it is reached a stage. And there are a lot of proactive clinical trials and clinical examples there which fall in there. So I could go on. I could go on. There's so many out there. There are so many solutions, so many interesting pieces out there. But yes, if I just mentioned this quadrant, so that this is how I conveyed this to my own leadership, right? Because otherwise,
Yeah.
everyone had an idea.
Yeah.
So we thought we should have a structured conversation, and that's how I brought this quadrant.
No, I think that's a fantastic way of putting it up. That we just spoke about it. Like, as leaders, it's our responsibility to build the trust. It's our responsibility to communicate it effectively. So that the leadership understands what we are talking about, and that's the conversation or the topic also, the leadership, and how the leadership is changing in an AI era.
Yeah.
So, and you nicely summarized it with all the concepts, and I really like that quadrant, way of looking at things. And I believe this is something which we could do specifically for any industry. There will definitely be an everyday AI, and there will be something related to the game-changing AI. And this can be applicable for every industry. If you do the proper mapping, you will be able to kind of get that and achieve that, and you can communicate it very effectively to your own leadership. So I think, thank you so much, Vineet, for putting that perspective. I think it's very, very useful for everyone, among the audience. But just before we move on to the next topic, one last element on this area. As we say, this healthcare is a very, very regulated industry, and it has to go through a lot of compliance aspects as well. So how do you see that, with this kind of innovation and, this kind of transformation that's happening at this pace, how will you balance the AI innovation, with the regulations and the compliance related to the healthcare?
Very valid point. In fact, that's where you have to begin your journey with, because that's what we have done when we got together. So is that it's usually the exciting part of AI and exciting part of all these things is that you really want to try all the sexy stuff, which takes time. That's the first thing that you want to do. You're rushing to do that. But sometimes it's important, again, the leadership aspect of it is that, okay, great. I mean, and you can't really stop it. I'm telling you, it's like, it's not easy to stop, which is what I meant by saying many of these have become so consumerized and so easy. You can't stop people from trying out a ChatGPT, right?
Exactly.
You can't stop people from downloading an app and like a Canva or any of these and use that to build a good poster. You can't stop that. But then at some point of time, as an organization or as health systems, in my case, we have to put together a very clear policy. So working on your AI policy and ensuring it and bringing it together along with your IT acceptable usage policy and your cyber policies and all other policies is the first thing that you do. If you don't do that, you can always do it. It's better late than never, but then you have to do that. You have to do that, because else what happens, you will soon end up in certain situations which can become troublesome, right? Can become unmanageable, can become difficult to deal with. So which is why policies are very important. And then when you are in a regulated sector like us, you have to be very clear that sometimes you will, like in health, in Dubai, and Dubai happens to be one of those what do you call, when it comes to ease of use and working with regulators, there can't be a better place in the world than Dubai, because when it comes to Dubai Health Authority or the Ministry of Health, the transparency and the ease of working with them, many times you're working with them together to create put in policies. Yeah. So we're very, very happy and very comfortable there. But even then, working with them, working with their policies. So your AI policy embedded with your IT policies, most likely IT acceptable usage, data privacy, information security, all coming together. And then obviously ensuring that you are well within the regulatory framework and the policies that the government and the regulators have laid together is what you should do, right? And it is not really tough. But then, yes, it becomes tough if you don't start and if you don't engage with everybody, because there will be a lot of objections when it comes down to if you do it later, because by then people would have done something very exciting and really don't want to give it up and don't because if you want to bring down a solution that is gone live and being really excited and people are excited about using it, because you bought a policy, it becomes difficult. But yeah, thank God it's not happened that way. But I'm saying, yeah. So therefore, the policy being there very clearly. Another aspect which is linked to this is also because that's about getting the basics right. Is about you have to have a very clear strategy on managing the skills. Be very clear as to whether you are going to hire so many employees or are you going to work with a partner. It's very important to either, because this is not a skill that is very easily available. It is getting better, but it will take some time. But so therefore, you may have to really think through your skilling.
Okay.
So policy, skilling, and then very clearly, and the most important one in this is, like I previously mentioned, in order to get focus into the conversation, in order to ensure that you're focusing on that vital few from the important many, you have to have that conversation with the stakeholders and agree on the use cases that you want to try.
Okay.
Otherwise, every day there will be something that you'll be working on, and you will not have the bandwidth and the none of those. When you will not have the resources, you will not have the bandwidth, you will not have the money to actually do justice to some of this. So for me, yes, so policy has to be there, working with the regulator, skills, and prioritizing the use cases perhaps is the first step that you do in all this.
I think again that's most crucial when it comes to having the right set of policies and procedures in place, and people need to know like where is the line, you know, and more and more technology is getting matured, and you know a lot of these kind of changes are coming in. The line has become even more finer and thinner. So that's where we need to draw that very, very clearly so that people know what's accepted, what's not accepted. So, so we'll move on to the next set of question here, which is the most important and the critical aspects, similar like AI, which is cybersecurity. And AI is a double-edged sword, and as we all know, the businesses has to be prepared enough, and especially with you being in the healthcare industry, I'm sure you might have gone through a lot of those kind of transformation and changes. What's your take? You know, how should business prepare? You know, and how do these AI-driven cyber attacks like deepfakes and phishing and all that stuff impact the cybersecurity, and specifically maybe related to the healthcare industry?
Yeah, sure. I would say AI has made life difficult when it comes to the cyber security, because when a technology is behind creating scenarios and anything like a deep fake, or creating various scenarios where the vulnerability is tested, or and when the technology is behind that, it makes very difficult for a human to really crack it, because the number of attempts, the number of various combinations, all becomes complex, right? Which is why it's become difficult. So which is why it needs a machine to beat a machine. It needs a bot to beat the bot. So which is why investment on technologies like AI on cyber becomes very obvious. And that is continuously going to evolve. It's a journey that's going to get better and better, because each side is going to get better. The attack is going to get complex and complex. Therefore, the solutions are going to get complex and complex. And there will be some time where that's where the human intelligence will always wane, I guess, because we will be able to find ways in which to crack and move on. So that's my point there, because I would say in all of these cases, I don't think there's any if there, because it's only how quick and how fast you're doing it. So usage is imminent. The AI is going to play a huge role in ensuring that we react fast and react well.
I think you talked about the bot to bot, and you know that there is a recent conversation that was going on. So what's your take on that? You know,
that's a very interesting aspect, right? That's why so there is a lot of fear around this AI. People say, I mean, people are worried that AI will take over and the human beings will have either no jobs or human beings will be, because you're seeing too many sci-fi movies and perhaps it's actually, it's not that it is completely not true, but it's also about how human beings, how human beings and how each one of us manage and use technology, and how you ensure that the good part of the technology is powerful enough, just like we have the good over evil, even human beings and even every place. Like I guess there is always going to be that, but then it's important that the human beings who are working on it will always find a way and will come good over evil, and that's very clear. So I'm not really worried about it. And this is a classic interesting case. It's just that two bots, when it got together and the conversations started happening, it found ways to communicate faster. It was doing its job right. There was nothing wrong in it.
Yeah.
Right. Just that we as human beings, standing and watching this, felt a bit worried because, oh, what happens if these guys start talking in a language we will never understand? And what happens if they scheme together and come after us? So to there the leadership aspect, or because we're talking about leadership in AI, is that this could happen anywhere. This could happen in any technology deployments, which is why you'll always keep that in mind, which is why you have exception scenarios, which is why you have logs, which is why you have scenarios in which even in the most trustworthy solutions, even things are all working fine, even still you have logs, right? So I think you have, as a basic technology aspect, you will put controls and exceptions handlers in each of these things, so that beyond a point you're always watching it. I think that's I believe is important to do, and that's, I guess, so I will not be really worried about two bots talking to each other in a language. I'll obviously at some point of time catch up.
Exactly. I think the human intelligence is something which is always going to be there.
Correct.
And the more we are conscious of what we are able to kind of produce as an output, and we should not be influenced by the technology. We should be actually taking the control over the technology. So I think that's very, very crucial for every leader going forward, because we are talking about, you talked about the game-changing AI on one aspect. Similarly, all the industries have, something or the other. And more or less, they are trying to, kind of match towards even the emotions, even the human skills of, human skills aspect, So it's very, very important that we stay calm, we stay, patient enough to understand what and how this is going, and take judicious calls and, conscious decisions. That's absolutely critical.
Correct.
One another aspect related to the cybersecurity itself is like, when we talk about cybersecurity, it's also about the cyber resilience. And, attacks cannot be prevented. We all know that.
Correct.
And as you rightly said, one side is getting powerful, the other side is also getting powerful.
Correct.
So it's always bound to happen, But at the stage, where when we talk about cyber resilience, we also talk about backups in cloud and, AI-powered backups in, the business continuity, and so many terms, people talk about it. But again, I'm more curious to understand here, when it comes to the healthcare, again, it's a regulated space. So you have a different problem to fight. You cannot just move everything to cloud. You cannot just take everything out of the country. So how do you tackle that kind of a scenario where you need to maintain that element of business continuity in this kind of an environment? You need to also ensure that the cyber resilience aspect is taken care of. So what, in general, is your advice towards the CIOs who are, especially in a regulated field like healthcare, what should they look forward, in terms to ensure the business continuity?
Yeah, so obviously the foremost thing is you'll always want to be within the regulatory framework and not do anything silly. So if the regulatory framework and that particular rule of the land says that data shouldn't go outside the geography, it shouldn't go outside the geography. Now within the geography itself, what that brings in is, I always have a problem there, because if you talk about a cloud deployment and then you bring in the restrictions of a geography, most of the time, most naturally, you have taken away one of those benefits of going cloud, which is business continuity and disaster recovery. Because the moment I go with the cloud or one of the leading cloud providers, any of them, I automatically bring in a BCP, because they have got another data center in another part of the world. that entirely is gone because I can't move the data out. So then you bring in, you have to no choice but to bring it within the same geography. Technically, you're still doing a BCP, but then you're not doing addressing the seismic zones and the other what do you call act of God that happens that could not be a genuine BCP. To that extent, yes. So you'll have to, but I believe as any smart technology leader or a smart CXO, you will obviously try to see keep enough mitigations by maybe hosting going from going into a hybrid arrangement. You have something offline on premise, sync it up with offline, so at any point of time you always have an offline copy of the thing of your data and the patient records, which now has become normal for all of us. And so it's a hybrid scenario, offline, online,
Okay.
and then ensuring that your backups, etc., are kept in multiple places, just like any other industry, to ensure the data is safe.
Okay. I think, we also talked about the data, and, as we have been hearing this data as the new oil and things like that for quite a number of years now. Again, just to, kind of close this particular thought process of data, and we are trying to protect the data itself, So how do you see these organizations or the healthcare organizations, how can they maximize the value? At the same time ensuring the compliance, So we were talking about the compliance aspect related to the business continuity. The same way, the business-driven insights are also crucial, So people, I'm sure the leadership needs every information at the fingertips, whatever you do. And most of the time it becomes really challenging, for us to get something if when every technology, everything is moving towards the SaaS or the SaaSification, what is your take? How do you ensure that maintaining that data-driven insights while ensuring compliance?
So no doubt that anything that you do has to be patient-centric. So even data and the way you manage has to be patient-centric. When I say patient-centric, what I mean is you only capture data that you need to treat the patient. That's very, very basic. And in our case, in the case of any data that we use in a healthcare and as a responsible healthcare provider, anything that you capture has to be with a consent. So when you come to me for an advice, a clinical advice, or you come to me with a clinical problem, and I am trying to help you solve it, that doesn't mean that I have every right to ask you and take everything from you. I should be taking the information from you that I need to take care of you. That's a basic principle. So systems have been designed to do that. Consents have been framed to do that. And regulatory framework is also saying that you manage that. So that's I'm just putting it across in a very simple way. It's not as simple as I say that, because you have to, because sometimes consents have to be taken. So sometimes these also lead to patient inconvenience and not the greatest of experience, because I again asking you 10 times to sign a piece of paper or to put a digital signature. You're saying, why are you each time taking it? But I have to take it because as part of that, that's the consent is specific to what procedure you're going through. Consent is specific to what have you come to us for. So some of that aspect, that's more just putting the regulatory aspect to this, right? But otherwise, when you take care, the simple things that you have to be careful about patient data is overall data in a clinical environment, just like anywhere else, has divided into basic information that identifies you, which is the identifiable information, and which is still okay, which is very common across all industries. And then comes the patient health record. So patient health record has become very sensitive because whether it is about your disease pattern, about a particular complex problem, or because it tells you anything about your age, your various, whether it could be symptoms, it could be a disease. Either way, they are very sensitive. That cannot be accessible to anyone other than the clinicians.
Okay.
And that to your clinician, your doctor. Okay. If another doctor has to see it, he has to take it because he has to be referred by your doctor. So that's very, very carefully handled.
I think this point is very, very critical, and especially when you're talking about healthcare, which is again a highly regulated industry. This leads to another question, what I have in mind, which is more towards the biases. We also know that AIs,
Exactly.
Has been blamed highest related to the bias, and we have heard a lot of examples,
Yeah.
about what's happening across the globe. And this has been a common subject now. And how do you think, it's increasingly AI as a technology is influencing the decisions, but at the same time, it's actually required. So how can we ensure that fairness and transparency is met? Because you talked about all those aspects of data and the availability for all your the patients as well as for the clinicians. So how do you handle that fairness and transparency?
So it's not going to be easy. I must say that but it's also coming back to the basic essence of what you just asked me even before this is about data. Uh, when it comes to AI, unlike the human bias, it's always because of data. You can trust that. So there are the interesting cases where an AI conducting an interview or looking through a lot of data and coming out with interview. It so happened that it was always going by and selecting male candidates, and that was seen as a bias. But then real fact was because it was looking at a data of a particular era, of a particular set of data across a span of perhaps a few decades, where it so happened that the male were the maximum employees. It was more resumes from male that were there because it just went with the data, and so therefore that was not a bias from an AI tool, but because the bias came from the data. So for me, I believe we can still crack the bias in an AI if you have the right data, and if you have classified the data well, and if you have fed the right data while you are testing that algorithm. To how do you crack it? Yes, you'll have to keep for everything in healthcare for a great period of time till the time it is super efficient and you've seen it working. You'll always keep the solution as a second opinion, right? You'll not let it move to the first opinion at any point of time. You'll always keep it as a second opinion. So any insights that come are used as nudges to the clinicians, and you leave the final discretion to the clinicians.
Okay.
That way, what you've done is you over a period get the clinicians actually sees this as a partner, and they work on it and they use it, right? And over a period, yes, every time they're not using it or if they are overriding it, even that is being captured. And if that has led to a wrong outcome, because you're also capturing the outcomes, you can always go back and say, Doc, you didn't use it, and it could have helped you drive a better outcome. So I would go by scientifically managing the bias. And I think with machines, we can still manage the bias better than human bias.
That's amazing. I think, you summarized it really well. Now we are coming into the last part of this podcast, and I'm sure the audience would loved it. It was quite insightful from the aspects towards trust and
I hope so. I wish so.
the game changing AI versus the everyday AI and stuff like that. But just before we close, I just wanted to ask you one last question here. What is that one piece of advice, or single piece of advice, if you wanted to give it to any of the leaders who are trying to approach an AI-driven transformation, who are trying to be maneuvering this leadership or leadership challenges in an AI era? What is that one piece of advice, which you would like to share?
Yeah, I guess the one piece of advice would be there is no crystal ball and there is nothing that you can crack overnight. It's a long journey. It's a tough journey. And it's not going to be easy as a tech leader to really, at certain times when you want to really push back saying this doesn't make any sense, but you still have to drive it. You will come across such scenarios working with business. But I think if you just stick to the basics, and if you, like I said, need not be the framework that I spoke about, just agree on a framework with the business. Or agree and don't make this as a CIO-led activity. Don't make it as a technology team-led activity. It will not go even beyond the room. So please keep it as a conversation. Please keep it as something that is you're working with the rest of the business. And ensure that if there is too much of conversation around AI, get everybody into a room and put a structure to that madness. Uh, and you will soon, even it could be as simple as an Excel sheet put in where saying, let's talk about the top 5 use cases they want to try. And let's put ownership against it. Let's put the money in it. And let's see how we take it forward. So yeah, maybe just no crystal ball gazing out there, but then very, very simple basic stuff.
Great. I think now we have come to the end of the podcast, and thank you, Vineet, for this wonderful insights. I'm sure there's a lot of takeaway today, and as you are coming from the healthcare industry and being one of the most regulated industry, and we talk about the talk of the town, which is AI, and we also discussed in depth in terms of how to maneuver the challenges that can come for leaders like us, and how can we maneuver that, challenges within this era of AI. I think, there is no crystal ball, that's, you summarized it really well. But it's all about, not leaving that control back into any tech that is coming in. Tech will keep coming in, but it's all about being vigilant, being conscious, being judicious, and understanding that concept of how to build that relationship, how to build the trust. This is one of the most important thing, I believe, irrespective of whatever technology which we are leading to. So with that, we would like to summarize this, and I'm sure you all have enjoyed this podcast. Thank you, ICD Digital and Digital Dunes, for this podcast. Stay tuned for our next session and next episode with yet another interesting and exciting topic. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Vineet, once again.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I must say, yeah, these conversations can go on. There's a lot out there that we can talk about, and I'm sure there'll be more that we'll come back with.
Exactly. We can keep talking it for a couple of hours more, but I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. Thank you so much.